So this is a bit of a gear change, but I've got about half an hour that I'm going to really kind of run through. But pretty much everything I say, there's resources and there's like kind of one little kind of hub that you can go to. So if you feel like you want to write something down or remember something, don't worry about it. It's all sitting somewhere safe. So I'm the founder and the director of Fruitfly Collective. So for about 9 years, we've been supporting families where a parent has cancer. But of course, when we say parent, it could be grandparent, it could be anyone significant in the child's life. And I always start these kind of talks with them, sharing a little bit of information and sort of learning that we did when we did a school education program. So we taught children between the ages of 9 to 11, about 1,000 of them. So significantly, there was going to be some kind of quite a fair bit of those children being affected by cancer within their family and community. So a lot of the stuff that we learned was quite surprising. The first one being that every single child was really curious and really interested about learning about cancer. And that included the kids that were recently affected and recently bereaved. So the teachers knew about it and they had support, but actually every single child stayed. And they were shouting, we had competition, they were throwing things. And actually the teacher said that it felt like a real empowerment for them to be a part of it. Second is that they have the ability to understand complex subjects as cancer. If you break it down simply, do it creatively. Third, that they don't have the same fears about cancer that adults do. So we went in and trained the staff beforehand, and the difference between going into a staff room compared to going into assembly hall was kind of palpable. So the next thing was that they really enjoyed having a platform to talk about cancer. And the teachers were really surprised because lots of kids that don't normally engage with strangers and adults that come into the school were coming up to us and telling us just about, my aunt had cancer, da-da-da, da-da-da. They didn't want anything, didn't need any support, they just wanted to talk about it. And it really highlighted to the teachers that actually how much cancer is within their communities that the teachers didn't know about because it wasn't necessarily their parent. And the fifth thing is pretty much we're quite naive as adults to think that we can hide cancer from children because we can't. Every single child, so before we went in and did our workshop, we asked the teachers for the children to write down on these massive A2 posters, I know this about cancer, I worry about cancer because, and I think cancer is caused by. And every single child put something down on it. So the next slide, hopefully it's got sound, it's a very good demonstration of what kids can think causes cancer. It's a bit for a laugh, but I think it highlights what we're demonstrating.
I think cancer is caused by frozen fruit,
Nutella, eating bacon,
McDonald's and KFC, germs in pizza,
eggs, sweetener,
expired food, Walker's crisps and quavers,
tapeworm's poo,
sitting on a toilet, brain damage,
biting a straw,
not washing your hands, kissing, too much stress, armpit spray, being outside when it's really cold, toxics from feces, animal bites, ink, drug dealers,
rotting body parts, people getting too close together,
iPhones and Samsungs, tiny robotic microbacteria that fly into your mouth and zap your guts and kidneys and everything.
So I think it beautifully illustrates some of the crazy stuff that they pick up. Sometimes you think, I think a parent or a teacher said that. So good communication is obviously key, but there are barriers, obviously. Lots of adults and parents feel it very difficult to talk to children. Lots of reasons why. Main reason really is that they want to protect them from harm. But we all know that kids are amazing and they have fantastic imaginations, wild imaginations, and they easily pick up on things. So they might be returning home and they might see that their parents less engaged with them, or they might feel feelings of stress, sadness, might be the phone ringing, people coming around with lasagna, chili con carne, all that sort of stuff. So they pick up on that. So matched with their amazing imaginations, often they come up with things that are worse than the actual truth. So telling them or partially telling them what incorrect early telling can lead to more worrying outcomes. And there's a risk that they would find out themselves. So school, playgrounds are a hotbed of gossip. So if so-and-so's mum knows, they might find out that way. And therefore, they can feel quite hurt and left out of the family if they do find that way. And actually, as an adult, keeping secrets is really difficult. So if we tell the children, they showed that they are trusted and a valued member of the family, they can express and talk about their feelings, they can talk about or ask all the questions that they have, they can even help at home. And crucially, they can start to prepare for the future, whatever that holds. So what do they know? So little ones, they will have some basic understanding about illness. They won't understand what cancer is, but they will have been ill themselves, they would have had colds, chickenpox, that sort of stuff. But they probably will have believed that they have caused the cancer. This is a really common thing. It's called magical thinking. So anything they thought, bad thoughts or bad behaviour or said something bad, they think that actually caused the cancer in their parent. And they will probably think cancer is contagious because we talk about colds and stuff, and probably more so since COVID. Older kids, they will begin to understand that people can have serious illnesses, and that includes the people that they love and their parents. We'll have the capacity to understand a little bit more about cancer. Sort of from about 9-year-olds, we've learned that actually then they can sort of get it. Cells in the body, I mean, little 1-6-year-olds would have started doing sort of like the heart and the lungs in schools. But this age group will still have that feeling of feeling responsible for that, for causing their parents cancer. And it's a bit like when they think of Father Christmas, you know, 11-year-old might go, oh, I know some guy can't go around the world and deliver presents to every single child, but I still kind of believe it. And that's kind of sometimes what they feel. They've got kind of 2 feet in 2 cups. Teenagers will have a similar understanding as adults, and sometimes they have a little bit more understanding because often they do cancer in science and in PSHE. However, they have said that they want the truth, they don't want it sugar-coated, and they want it delivered in a non-patronising way. So, we're just going to briefly cover some changes that you might see in children's emotions and behaviours due to their parents' cancer diagnosis. So obviously these are going to depend on the age of the child, emotional maturity, because 2 8-year-olds could be completely different. Their own coping style, and that might be like withdrawing, or they might be like, you know, one that sort of runs around more. Their level of understanding about cancer and their parents' cancer. This is the biggie, really. The impact on their own routines. And lastly, how they view that their parent is coping. So some common changes that you often find is that they return to younger behaviours. So if they suck their thumb or wet the bed, and they've grown out of that, they might return to that. It's kind of like a little safe space for them. A lot of kids find it very, very hard to emotionally regulate themselves, so they would have tantrums, and even like teenagers just not being able to sort of manage their own anger. Many kids mask how they're feeling, that anxiety and sadness, by being really good, because if they're really, really good, no one's going to ask them any questions. No reaction, which can be really, really hurtful for the adults around them, but it's a very normal reaction. It's oftentimes they just need more time to process. Teenagers tend to use that as a sort of denial, as a coping mechanism. Become suddenly afraid of new situations and new things, which again can be really frustrating for parents because there doesn't seem to be any link. There's no rational reason why they suddenly started becoming frightened of the dark, dogs, swimming, that sort of stuff. Complaining of physical ailments is a very common thing, so it might be psychosomatic, it might be about anxiety, but it also sometimes mirroring what the parent is feeling. So if they're feeling nauseous, then they might complain of stomach aches as well. Sleep problems, nightmares, not wanting to go to bed, waking up and not going back to sleep, not wanting to sleep in their own room, all of that, and that can kind of play into having trouble paying attention at school. Withdrawing, really worrying about other people's house, especially if they're in a 2-parent family, the healthy parent. Separation anxiety is a massive thing, so often it manifests before school, before bedtime, because you're physically leaving them. And some kids have a real difficulty adapting. So it might be having free time at the weekend, then suddenly going into a structured school. That transition can be really difficult for them. And for some kids, leaving within the school day, so the structure of having classes and lessons is quite comforting to them, and then suddenly they're left to go out into for lunchtime in the free play, and that transition can be very challenging. For teenagers, they struggle with the normal development, i.e. they're trying to become more independent, but actually feeling guilty about kind of leaving, so they're being pulled in 2 separate directions. And as I said, using denial is a common thing. So how to support them? So this is about talking to children. So we often give a few sort of tips. So tell them when you're ready, and don't think of it as a massive chat. Have a series of chats, so there's no pressure on getting it right. And if you don't get it right, it's fine. But it doesn't feel like you've got to get everything out there. If you feel like you need somebody else, then often choose somebody that your child trusts as well. Rehearsing, so we always bang on about rehearsing. So saying I have cancer out loud for the first time to your children is very, very scary. So say it in front of the mirror, say it with your partner, your friends, whoever. And sometimes we just say, actually put 3 bullet points down, because then you're in control. You have a little bit of control. You know what you're going to say. Kids don't care if you read it out, and lots of parents have said to us that they've taken some of the booklets that we've written and just read out the examples. And then choosing the time and the space where you're going to do this. So it can be really good to do it at the weekends, because obviously there's to have more time to process actually what's happening and come back to you with questions. Preferably not before bed, not before school. And think about how you're going to do it. So little ones sitting on the floor, so you're eye level. Teenagers, don't be eye level at all. Sit next to them on a sofa so they don't feel so confrontational. But being physical and holding hands can be really comforting to them. If you've got more than one kid, telling them all at the same time so everyone's on the same page, allowing time to process information and don't feel like you need to fill up their silences because they might be actually thinking about it. Some of the little kids might not be. They might be just like, can I go and play now? So don't, as I said, don't assume that they have the same fears as you, but be honest and don't use misleading ideas. So as us adults, we try and sort of say things in different ways. So saying the big C, they've got no idea what you're talking about, or I've got a bug, or anything like that. Crying is okay, because actually your role modelling is a good thing, that actually showing and expressing emotions is good, but obviously try not to be too kind of hysterical in terms, because it just will frighten them. Tell them what you currently know. So this is quite good to have your bullet points. So simple sentences. Even teenagers can get overwhelmed with too much information. So just tell them what's happening, what the doctor has said, and that's it really. And then be led by your child. So you will know if you've got a kid that likes to know everything and all the questions, or you might have a child that just wants a little bits of information. We often call it the jigsaw puzzle. So like, think of it, you just put one bit of the puzzle there, and then you're going to kind of build it together. For little ones, it's quite good to ask them to repeat what you've just said. So that can be quite good in terms of working out where their gaps of knowledge are, or any misconceptions or whatever. So you can do it quite creatively, get their favourite toy and go, can you tell Fluffy what I've just told you? Or you could be, they could be the teacher, you could be the student. They love all that role play. And lastly, obviously, it's okay to not know all the answers, because you won't. And actually, when we did the school project, we had so many questions. And some of them we had to go back to our oncology friends, and they were quite involved. So the good thing is to say that I'm not too sure about that, but let's write it down, and I'll go back to my healthcare team, and we'll get an answer for you, and do go back to them. So the key things really is to reassure them. So reassure them that they will be told of any changes, because then they can kind of park it. They go, I know, I don't have to worry, because I know that mum and dads are going to come back and tell me if there's been any changes. Oh, there you go. That's dramatic. Reassure them that nothing that they did caused cancer. So even teenagers can think this. They know that saying something is not going to cause cancer, but actually, if they said something hurtful, if they slam the door, they might think that the stress that they caused their parents actually has caused the cancer. And the last, reassure them they will always be loved and taken care of. So what to say? So for little ones, you can just say something very simple, as mum or dad is sick, you need to take some medicine, that's it. For older kids, from 6 up, I always use the word cancer, because they don't have anything attached to that word. And you can talk about cells misbehaving, you can talk about lumps, or if you want to call it tumours, you can talk about whatever makes sense to you and your child. But it's quite good to have a little action afterwards. So say, but we're going to look into some treatment, or we're going to be talking to the doctors or something. There's a kind of a plan afterwards. And for older kids, teenagers, you can give them more information, whatever they want, whatever they need to know. So we always say about, using myeloma or anything like that, any kind of like words that are quite long and sort of difficult, that we think that children won't find, will find it challenging, because they know Stegosaurus, they know Diplodocus, all of that stuff, which are quite long words from the age of like 4 or whatever. So little kids cancer is quite abstract for them, so actually using an analogy that they can sort of visualize is good. So we use the flower bed. So the flower bed are the healthy cells, and in the flower bed there are weeds, which are the cancer cells. So just like the gardener needs to remove the weeds, the doctors need to move the cancer. And this can be a good analogy to use for secondary cancers. So you can see that the weeds grow underground and we don't see them, and they pop up somewhere else in the body. So having props is really, really good when you have these conversations, because not only it kind of makes you a little bit more grounded and a bit more in control, because you can fiddle with something, or you can stare at something, and you can both stare at something. But also it often can really impart sort of complex information in a quite digestible, easy way for kids. So we talk about Lego pieces as well. If your kid's really into Lego, you can use that as an analogy. So build a wall with Lego with them. Get a piece of Lego that's been chewed, or a bit of a pea or something stuck inside and it won't fit on the wall. That's a cancer cell. So it has to be removed so the rest of the wall can be built up. Those kind of things that kids can kind of go, oh, right. So there's a great app. I won't go into this, but it's all, you can find this. That's brilliant, and lots of people like it because it's just, adults like it because it just tells it very simply what cancer is, how it can be treated, and things like that. There are fluffy cells. All the kids love these sort of things. There's doing like first aid kits for their little cuddly toy and things like that. And just really to start those conversations, to have something with you, and so something you could open up a book and start talking about emotions and things like that. For teenagers, Rip Rap, I don't know whether you know this, but Rip Rap is a really great website. It does give information about cancer, but the key thing about that is that there's lots of stories from young people who have been in a similar situation, so they don't feel so alone. Are you going to die question. So this is a question that no parent wants to answer. But actually, we always say, try and prepare something so you're not going to brush it off. Because actually, if you brush it off, they kind of get the sense that, okay, this is a subject that we can never talk about. So actually, having something that you've prepared. So it can be very vague, and it can be dependent on what you want to say and your circumstances. So you can just say something vague, like I hope not, nothing for certain. Depending on your prognosis, you can say lots of different types of things. But the key thing is to say, once you've said what you want to say that they will be informed of any changes. Again, it's about them parking, so it's allowing them to think, oh right, I can bring up those kind of hard subjects and those questions, but I know that that's okay, and I'll be informed if anything changes. The thing is that every kid thinks it's because there's such a strong link between cancer and people dying. So that even if they don't say it, little kids might say it, but the older ones won't say it, but they will think it. So how to support them? So basically, they need to feel secure, and security can be from being loved, being informed, and included in the family, and having lots of boundaries. So keeping the routine schedules and everything consistent, which is very challenging in a family where a parent has cancer, because inevitably family life will change. However, that's okay as long as they know, and they kind of know why, and preferably in advance, so they can manage their own expectation. Because kids, they don't have much control really. They're kind of parents told them what to do, they go to school, teachers tell them what to do. So actually the little bit of control that they generally have, it's been often taken away in these situations. So we say take things, little tools, very simple tools, like doing daily timetables and monthly timetables for the older ones. So the little ones, splitting up the day, just getting a piece of A4 paper, morning, afternoon, evening, and night, and then slamming it on the fridge and going, right, you've got to eat breakfast, do your teeth, da-da-da. So-and-so's picking you up for nursery, or grandma's looking after you, da-da-da. So they can kind of sense what their day is like, especially if their day is suddenly changed very dramatically or is quite chaotic. And for older kids, so for monthly calendars are really good for even taking into schools, because then the teachers get a snapshot of what's happening at home and then can therefore evaluate homework levels and all that kind of stuff. We often say to the kids, like, put in stuff that isn't cancer, so they don't feel like cancer is like taking over the world, so all the kind of school stuff, friends stuff, all that kind of stuff. And we often say to the parents, put your treatment in, so they know, all right, mum might be having chemo or whatever, but actually I know she has to go stay in bed for that day, but I might still ask her for football practice, but they generally sense that they know that their mum's not going to be up and about that day. Taking time to listen to them and validate their feelings. It's very easy for us parents to just want to sort of wish them everything okay, so you just go, don't be silly, it's fine. But actually it's their feelings, so actually validate and go, I can understand that you're feeling sad, you're feeling anxious, you're feeling angry, those kind of things, because it validates that all of those emotions are normal. So help to identify feelings. So little kids kind of even teenagers actually sometimes find it quite hard to articulate and find the right feeling, especially if it's guilt is quite a common feeling, but it's often quite hard to articulate. So things like if you're still reading them stories or watching films together, whatever, you can pause it and just go, oh, this character. I mean, every Pixar kind of got some kind of theme. So you can pause it and say, oh, this character feels this. Do you ever feel this? What does it feel like when you feel angry? Does it come from your stomach? And that sort of. And again, it's just a way of a platform for conversations to fly off from. Smaller kids, using their little cuddly toys, really good, because often they don't know how to express it. But you can say, oh, it's fluffy feeling sad today, that kind of stuff. And they're more likely to open up about their feelings. One thing about teenagers that don't want to talk about their feelings or don't want to engage at all, one kind of good thing, one way of trying to do it is talk about your own feelings. So say, I'm feeling very worried today because I'm waiting for the scan results. And then have some kind of thing that how you're going to deal with it, how you're going to deal with that worry. So I'm going to go have a coffee with so-and-so, that's going to help. And they can you're role modelling how you can feel those emotions and how those emotions are very valid, but you're going to try and find some way of dealing with it. Creating worry boxes is a tried and tested method. So lots of parents said before bedtime's been really good for them or before school, and actually teachers use them in classroom. So it's a way of parking the kids' worries, so they can write down or draw their worries, pop it in the box, any old box, Amazon box, little kids can draw on it, stickers or whatever. And it's a way of them just sort of freeing up their brain. So sometimes to say, these are not going to be solved, these worries, because sometimes they get a bit angry about that, but it's a way of you parking it. So you can go to sleep or you can go to school. And sometimes also it's a good thing to ask them with their consent, can we look inside this worry box? Because as we all know, children's brains are amazing and wild, but sometimes they're like 2 and 2 makes 64 or whatever. And so you might be able to solve some of those worries. So an example I always give is the social worker told me that this kid's mum was really unwell during the summer holidays, and so he had strategized over the whole summer holidays, right, I'm going to go to school in my too small school uniform and I'll just be bullied. Or I'm going to go into school in my own clothes and get told off by the teachers, or I just won't go to school. And the social worker was like, why can't your dad buy your school uniform? And he hadn't thought about it, because basically his mum had always been the one to go to the school uniform shop and buy it. So the social worker was allowed to say, no, your dad can get it, that's fine. But had they looked into the box, had they known about it before, he wouldn't have had to worry about it for the whole summer holiday. And then in calm moments, think with your child and talk to your child and kind of discuss what safe outlets for feelings that they're going to have. So, for example, if they have feelings of anger, then that feeling is very valid and it shouldn't be shut down, because it's a feeling that they would, why not, but actually the behaviour with the emotion might not be good. So punching the wall, that's no. So telling them that the anger's okay, but the behaviour's not. So what can you do when you're feeling those things? So like getting a pad of A4 paper, ripping it up, great. Put it in the recycling afterwards. Or a special ball, go to the garden and you throw the ball, take the dog out, whatever. Get them a special pillow, the screaming pillow. This is your screaming pillow. We give you permission to go upstairs and just go into your bedroom and scream into it. Other ways is including them in family decisions. Lots of kids feel powerless. They want to help, but they just don't know what to do. So thinking about age-appropriate tasks around the house. So for little ones, they could be chief toilet roll changer, holder, or whatever. Older kids obviously can dishwasher, unload the dishwasher, make meals and stuff like that. Creating a support network. So these are often for little kids called the helpers. And so we kind of give all the helpers that somebody with cancer has, so all the medical and the healthcare team around them. So this is a really good thing to do for your child as well. So what are all the people around you that care about you and support you? So there's the obvious ones, but then think about things like club leaders, faith leaders, swimming instructors, those sort of stuff. That can be really comforting to a child to visualise and see, oh wow, I have all these people around me. age-appropriate information I've talked about, keeping them informed, giving them a reliable, because we all know there's a load of rubbish out there, so pointing them to reliable stuff that they can look at. Time out and happy list, it's kind of giving them permission to have fun. A lot of kids feel guilty about laughing or going out with their friends when their parent is sick. So actually saying, I want you to have fun, and telling them to do that. And actually happy lists are kind of just like, you know, a piece of paper that you can have up so they can see it, that they can think, oh, when they're feeling stronger or whatever, we can do something that day. So it doesn't have to be Chessington World of Adventures. It could be just like popcorn, you know, in front of a film, picnic on the floor, that type of thing. Another ways to make them, give them a way of making them feel like they're doing something constructive is to plan fundraising events. So for here, there you go. And again, for teenagers, about communication. So trying to sort of make sure that communication still happens in a different way. If you try one way, it doesn't work, try another way. Some days it will work, some days it won't. So things like WhatsApp messaging, where it's just very brief, and maybe just an emoji, and that's it. But actually there's a sort of communication there. They won't have Facebook, obviously, but they could be the admin for the closed Facebook group if you have one that updates your friends and family. So they're not really part of it, they're just kind of taking the information that you've given them and putting them on the group. Talking in the car, obviously, it's tried and tested method. You're not staring at each other, you're not kind of like intensely looking in each other's eyes. One boy told me that actually he has really good chats with his mum when they're washing up. She's washing up, he's drying up. It's the same principle, they're staring both ahead. Post-it notes, little things, or going to the cafe saying, right, this is a designated time for you. So Thursday after school, we're going to go to the cafe, we're going to have hot chocolate. Don't expect a big old chat, but actually one day, 1 week, they might still have that. So they kind of know that that space is for them. Some families like big old discussions, or notepads left on the kitchen table for everyone to put in, or massive chalkboards. The key thing is to try and keep connecting with your child throughout, even when you're knackered, even when you just can't be bothered, because they don't rude them. And finally, this is more about if you are away from your child, so if you are spending time in hospital or just in respite or whatever, so things like for tiny little ones, having smell of your t-shirts or blankets or whatever, tying a photo to a teddy that they can go to bed with is really good. Pocket friends are lovely, so this really helps with separation anxiety. So you can choose anything. It could be a button, it could be like a little stone. Some kind of palliative care nurses uses little bits of material that they sew into the kids' jumpers. And the idea is really when they're away from you, so you might be at home and they might be at school, they can feel connected, so they can feel it, they can touch it, and they have that sense of like kind of connection. So in times when they're feeling a bit stressed or lonely, they can feel a connection with you. Different types of hug. If you're, parts of your body are in pain or whatever, you can just think of creative things like finger hugs and things like that. If you're coming home with something different, just to prepare for them for fear of unknown. So if you were to have any of these kind of apparatus or whatever, then actually if they've seen it beforehand or even a photo beforehand, then it just makes them go, oh yeah, right, it's not kind of something new and weird. Yes, so if you are going into hospital, sometimes you just want to try and make it less frightening for them, so it's not belittling any of the treatment or anything, but it's making them think that, oh, mum or dad is not going to this really, really weird place, frightening place. Actually, this is what it's like. So taking photos, taking their soft toy, putting it on an IV drip, putting it on a chair in the waiting room or whatever, or having your kind of CNS holding it and stuff like that. So you can bring it home and you can have a chat with your kids, and it just makes them like, oh, that's, it's quite nice to have a connection with your key CNS or whoever, because then they kind of think, oh yeah, you're a real person. And then all these are lots and lots of different resources. So if you just go to fruitflycollective.com, so you can find all these resources. You can find loads of free stuff under the help thing. There's stuff for teachers, there's stuff for young kids, teenagers and parents. And then PIPS kits are slightly different. It's for parents with incurable cancer. A lot of the techniques and the tools and the coping strategies are all the same, but there's slight difference in conversations. And then lastly, this is a project that just launched this year, this month, and it's funded by Macmillan and National Lottery, and the idea is to pull everything, because actually it depends where you live, what cancer type you have, and all these other kind of things of actually what access to support if you are a carer of a child up to the age of 18. So we just pulled everything together. So we're working with a whole network of different organisations and charities that support parents specifically, really. But you can find coaching, you can find, and it's all free. You can find lots of different workshops. So we have workshops on supporting neurodivergent kids, talking about inherited cancers, all that sort of stuff. So you just need to go on and book. So we have a whole team of parents with lived experience, and they said, we don't want a leaflet, much to the healthcare professionals in our team. They said, we want somewhere where we're scrolling in the middle of the night anxious. We just want something where we can just go and have a look. So there's lots of stuff. So that's the workshops, and all you need to do is just book it. And all these resources here that we love are all on the website. So there is a lot out there for you to access. That's it. Thank you very much.